This is by far the most important video I've ever made because 80% of people will experience substantial back pain at some point in their life. Of that, 12% of those people end up clinically disabled, meaning they get one of those adorable little handicap stickers and this sick ride. And even if that's not you, you're one of the lucky ones. Very few people understand how to properly align their spine and brace before they lift. And on top of that, if you have shoulder and hip mobility issues, you're never gonna fix them until you fix your spinal mechanics first. The first thing I want to shed light on is the spine itself. Now, we've all seen models like this before, but I think very few lifters truly appreciate how wonky the spine actually is. Your spine is curved all to hell. The lumbar and cervical portions of your spine have a natural inward curve known as lordosis, and your thoracic spine has a kyphosis or outward curve. Your spine is the strongest and able to bear an incredible amount of compression when it's in this neutral position, when all the vertebrae are perfectly aligned and displacing even distribution of force through the disc below them that almost act like individual joints. That was a tough one. That was a tough one. Where you run into issues is when the curves of your spine become either too exaggerated or non-existent. A pretty common fault you'll see in the gym is when people lose the lordosis of their lumbar spine. The old brown eye wink. You're better than that. That should be an aha moment because I'm sure at some point in your life you've had a coach or a training partner give you the verbal cue to flatten your back during a deadlift or keep your head up during a squat. I am guilty of this as well. Those are dumb things to say. You shouldn't tell someone to flatten your back, you fucking piece of shit. Because inevitably they're gonna take that verbal cue and then proceed to flatten out their lumbar spine, which we know needs that inward curve to be in a neutral position. So in fact, if you see somebody with a flat back, they're actually more susceptible to injury. And then when you tell somebody, fucking head up or I'll murder your fucking family. No one takes that cue and then tilts their head back just enough to realign their spine in a neutral position. They tilt their head back as far as they fucking can and then create a localized extension fault in their cervical spine. I might have to amend that by saying it's a lot harder to tell on chubbies. If you're somebody that self-identifies as medium husky to husky, then you're not gonna be able to get visual confirmation that your spine is in a neutral position because it might be neutral, and that might just be a shitload of back fat. So the most important thing you could do to make sure your spine never turtles out of your ass is to have a set of kinesthetic cues that you run through in a step-by-step process to make sure your spine is in a neutral position. That's what you're learning today. Magic School Bus. And we're gonna need two of these. The one we use for lifting, which is called a braced neutral spine, and the one we use for everyday life, which you could just call perfect posture, that is a little bit easier to get into, there's less steps, but it's just as important because people underestimate how much they put their back at risk with everyday activity, like tying their shoes or picking up something random to impress a woman. Oops, I dropped my monster condom that I use for my Magnum dong. I can't emphasize this enough. If you spend 23 hours outside the gym with improper spinal mechanics and bad posture, it has more of a negative effect than anything you could do in the gym. I mean, unless you train like a complete asshole. And before somebody says, I don't know if I believe that, because I've been told that there's no such thing as bad posture. Your next posture is your best posture. That's complete bullshit, because there are Goodwill Hunting formulas you can use to figure out the spinal compression force, the force of the muscle itself, and most importantly, the shearing force between two specific vertebrae. To me, that's fascinating. You could take a formula like that, waste your entire Sunday, and figure out that a 300-pound deadlift done with a neutral spine is a hell of a lot safer than having the curvature of a spine just slightly off and picking up an object that only weighs 20 pounds that's a foot in front of you. Yes, the compressive force of the deadlift is going to be higher, but that's what your spine does. That's its job. The real danger and risk for injury comes when one of your vertebrae becomes out of alignment. It creates what's called a shear force, where one of the vertebrae slides on top of the other. That's where you get your bulging disc, your ruptured disc, your pet's head starts falling off. And that shearing force can happen the moment you lose that neutral spine positioning. Hopefully I've scared you enough that you maintain proper spinal mechanics, even if you're just picking up your giant condom that you use for your Magnum dong. So let's walk through the process of creating a braced neutral spine. The best way I've found is the supple leopard method. In this process, you'll remain identical regardless of the lift. You'll simply just adjust the width of your stance, the angle of your hips, whatever you have to do to get in position to execute that lift, but the way you align your spine and brace for the lift should never change, or you're fucked. Step 1, wind your feet. And I hesitate to say rotate because you don't actually want your feet to move. You want them to lock in place. Just feel the pressure and torque of external rotation because it's going to put pressure on the outside of your knee and help align your hips. Step 2, contract your glutes. That's going to help align your pelvis in a neutral position. Where is America when you need her? The reason I'm not having her do this is because the last video she was in got flagged because fuck me, right? Step 3, time to brace your abdominals. Now, the way I like to teach this is take 4 fingers and jam them into your oblique. The only way you're going to get that pain to stop and for those fingers to exit is if you brace your abdominals in a way that doesn't just fire those superficial muscles, but contracts those deep muscles involved in stabilizing your spine, like your transversus abdominis. I think I just subconsciously made myself want to have dominoes. Fuck dominoes. And that's just bracing for proper alignment. When you brace to do a lift, the intensity is going to change based upon the lift you do. A standing dumbbell curl will need a lot less intense contraction than a heavy-ass deadlift. So vary the intensity accordingly. Don't just give yourself a hernia. By flexing your glutes and bracing your abs, you've now aligned your lumbar spine. The little green bastard. So now we have to work on your thoracic spine because when you brace your abdominals, you actually compress your entire trunk and everything goes forward and down. So to fix that, you're going to open up your shoulders in external rotation by bringing your hands out to the side, thumbs up to the ceiling, and then drop your hands right to your side. It's that simple. From there, all we have to do is align the cervical part of your spine. So to do that, I want you to pretend there's a string attached to the bald spot on the back of your head. When that string is pulled, your head goes slightly back and your chin drops into a neutral position. Next obvious question is, how in the hell am I supposed to brace and breathe at the same time while I lift? I am glad you asked that question because I'm gonna fucking answer it. The first thing you gotta understand is that no matter what, when you breathe, you have less compressive force in your abdomen, which is gonna put you more at risk for injury. But you also can't just hold your breath the entire set. That impedes blood flow to the heart, increases blood pressure, and you probably get done with that set and realize that you have what seems to be a shiny new testicle. The key is to take short, compressive breaths from your diaphragm. Not like this. Whoever designed this program is an idiot because this person is breathing with their chest. And when you do that, you ultimately tilt back and forth and create a localized fault in your thoracic spine. I'm probably going to spend the rest of my week finding out where the person lives who designed this so I can go shit on their lawn. So focus on short diaphragmatic breaths, or put simply, breathing through your stomach. That'll allow you to maintain that abdominal brace and then line up your breathing based upon your need. And I would love to tell you it's as simple as breathing in during the eccentric, breathing out during the concentric, but it is way more nuanced than that, because think about just doing negatives on Nordic hamstring curls. By definition, the concentric part of that movement is when I take my hands and push myself back up, but I don't even give a shit about that part. So that means I'm inhaling during the negative, which runs the risk of creating laxity in my lumbar spine, because when you inhale, there's innately less compressive forces than when you exhale. So in that scenario, I should breathe out during the negative. What the fuck? And before you say just exhale on the hardest part, that doesn't work either, because think about a 10-second negative on a squat with an explosive positive. That positive is easy compared to that negative. That negative sucks all the dicks. And yeah, negatives are a rarity, and you can get by with the phrase in during the negative, out during the positive, but I think a better way to think about it, and a question you can ask yourself before any lift that will never let you down, is during what part of the lift is it most important I utilize the more compressive forces of the exhale to help stabilize my spine? Now, when it comes to fixing your day-to-day posture that the forces of gravity and the stresses of life itself slowly erode with each passing second, it's actually a lot easier. And this works whether you're standing or seated, but I'll highlight the seated version because most people's issues are derived from sitting on their ass all day and losing the natural lordosis in their lumbar spine. All you need to do is go into the extremes and start to back it off. So for your lumbar spine, you're going to arch your back and then gently start to contract your abs until you feel the muscles in your low back start to relax. Then your lumbar is set. From there, it's the opposite for your thoracic spine. You go into flexion, and then you start to externally rotate those shoulders until you feel those mid-back muscles start to relax. Then tug your bald spot to correct your cervical spine. And it might seem like a lot to maintain that posture throughout the day, but it's not when you realize that this is a neutral posture, and this is a neutral posture, and this as well. What I'm saying is you don't have to sit straight up like a jerk off the entire day. You can change the angle of your body because it doesn't matter what your hips are doing. Now, if you're somebody that habitually winks at everybody that walks by during your squat, I want you to do this exercise before every leg and back day. It's a variation of a plate good morning. And there's a very specific way I want you to do these. So lock your feet in, put pressure on the outside of your knees, flex your glutes, brace your abs, externally rotate your shoulders, pull the bald spot in the back of your head. And as you do these, I want you to focus on keeping the plate as close to you as possible the entire time. Because not only are we working to increase the endurance and strengthen those spinal muscles, but we're also working to stabilize those shoulders and increase mobility in the hips. Because if you have mobile hips, stable shoulders, and a neutral spine, no one will ever laugh at your loquacious butthole again. If you don't already know, the new Backed by Science program is live. It's by far the most efficient way to train. I also included a 30-minute version for those of you that have a life, and good luck.